My name is Zoe Rose Winkler Waldrop. Oh, I need the pen. Never mind, starting over. Hello, my name is Zoe Rose Winkler Waldrop, and I am a graduated senior from the Communication Arts program at Montgomery Blair High School. And I'd like to talk to you a little bit about my CAP experience. So for me, a huge part of my scholastic life, my academic life, has been my insane curiosity. I constantly ask questions about everything, and any of my teachers or fellow students can always recognize that when they're in a class with me. And so that's been a really big part of my high school experience, especially in CAP. And so I thought that something that represented my growth most was my experience learning to ask the right questions, which really has been a journey for me because there were even rules made freshman year about how many questions I could ask. And I think I've definitely grown a lot in that aspect, and I think it's really reflected through my CAP work and experiences in CAP. So my quote is by Voltaire, and it's "Judge a man by his questions rather than by his answers." And for me, this really is important because I may not have a lot of amazing answers to a lot of important questions, but I do think I ask a lot of the important questions that I think are important to reflect on in life. And I think that's true for a lot of students, that there's a lot of pressure to have all the answers rather than just know which questions to ask, which I think is a skill that's kind of lost in a lot of today's generation. So first, I want to talk about media and communication skills, which for me, I think was best reflected in my feature story sophomore year. So this assignment was to write an extended journalistic paper or feature story on a subject of your choosing, which I really loved right away because getting to pick a topic that I was already interested in really appealed to me because in high school you don't always get to choose what you work on. In fact, you rarely do. And so I really loved this opportunity at first because I was already so curious about this museum that I ended up writing my paper on. And so this gave me an excuse to go talk with people and say I was doing it for a school story and everything, ask them all the questions that I was really curious about. So I really loved getting to work on this. It actually really helped me with my question asking abilities because I had to plan it ahead. Like I just assumed like, oh, I ask a lot of questions and quantity equals quality. And so when I ask all these questions, it'll go really well. But then when I was planning out my first interview, I kind of realized that I really had to think about what answers I wanted and then therefore what I had to ask to get that information. And so, yeah, so that was a really big part of it. And then also, I find a lot, with myself at least, I have trouble choosing the right words to communicate my meaning thoroughly enough. And so that was something I also really had to work on through this. And what I also really loved about this paper was the journalistic aspect in which you really have to focus on giving a lot of detail and kind of describing the situation rather than, stating it. And so that was a writing skill that I've really brought with me through all my writing experiences since sophomore year and in sophomore year afterwards. Yeah, it was a paper that I really loved, and I use that skill even today in my senior year papers. So that was very important to me. And so then for connections between disciplines and subjects, I think two things that really connected for me were my ELIC, Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close presentation, sophomore year, and then the Oxbridge program that I did that summer, which was a month-long study program at Cambridge University, Jesus College, Cambridge. And so for the ELIC presentation, going into this, I also really liked it because it was kind of more free. The assignment was to choose a theme or a message from the book Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close and make a standalone presentation from, I think it was 8 to 10 minutes, about that message that you got from it, and then add music and quotes and other literature within it. And so at first, I really loved this opportunity. I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I get to come up with all my own ideas. But then kind of as soon as I really started thinking about it, I realized that I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do because I wasn't very confident in my own ideas. Like when I heard other people say what they were going to do, I was like, oh, that's such a great idea. And then I was like, why can't I come up with one as good as that? And so it was a lot of pressure that I put on myself to try and come up with a really good topic. And then I realized that instead of trying to find a topic that my friends had been coming up with similar to that, I should find one that really applied to myself, that I really was passionate about. And so I used this opportunity to kind of relate this assignment back to myself so that I felt more confident in my own ability. And so I connected it to the message of confusion and misunderstanding and the amount of question asking that went on in the book, because a lot of it's about the main character asking questions and trying to find answers to his questions. And so that was a really big experience for me, learning to gain confidence in my own knowledge and be happy with the academic choices I made. And so by the time I was doing my presentation, I was very confident, and I wasn't so worried about not being able to talk about it. I was actually very happy that it was standalone because it spoke for itself. And so I had just kind of general comments like, I'm confused, and I had several different kinds of question marks displayed throughout the presentation. And quotes, I have a question that I was just wondering, all these different questions that Oscar asked, and examples of that. And then I connected it to Shel Silverstein poems, which are, I think, as most people know, very confusing and kind of weird. And then I played very loud techno music in the background, so it was kind of this overwhelming experience, which is kind of what I felt, and I think what Oscar, the main character in the book, felt. So I actually really loved this opportunity to connect all of that. And so then that summer when I went to Cambridge, having gained this confidence in my own ability to write and understand literature, when it came to my major course, which was History Secrets, and my minor course, which was International Espionage, I actually gained the confidence for my final essay, which was my culminative project for my major course, for which I received grades, I chose to write a short story, which I'd never really done before, because in the past I'd never felt very confident in my own writing abilities. And so this was actually the first time where I chose to write something of my own free will rather than being assigned it. And I actually really, really loved it. It was about the mind of someone who believed in conspiracy theories, which it was very lighthearted. It was about an animal, it was Roger the Rabbit, and I really enjoyed getting to write it. And I just sat down, and I just kept on writing, and I felt very confident with it, and I ended up getting an A, and in the course and in my minor course. And it was just another experience where I was given freedom, and through that I gained more confidence in my own knowledge. In the class, the classroom, feeling that it was very different from American high schools. There were smaller groups, and it was much more free, and I felt more confident in my own knowledge, so I raised my hand more, and rather than asking questions, I also contributed with information. And I felt that summer was also a big turning point for me, because I felt the need to ask lots of questions so that I would, because I felt so unsure about my own knowledge previously about assignments and such. So this was just a really great experience for me to learn. So this is just me studying with my friends. This is my international espionage class, and this is some of the people from my History Secrets major. This was one of the field trips we went on in the university, and it was a really great experience in which I really felt I grew intellectually. So for critical thinking and intellectual growth, I chose my cover sheets because I really felt that those exemplified my actual growth the best, because I was looking at a lot of my papers, and I originally had thought about doing my paper from freshman year and then also from sophomore year. But I decided that even though there was definitely a lot of growth from those years, because freshman year was not hardly as good as my sophomore year one, I realized that what I felt showed the most growth was my critical thinking in cover sheets, is reflecting on myself. And when it came to cover sheets, sophomore year, it was kind of like, oh, you just kind of talk about what the presentation meant to you, and you just get your cover sheets over with. But then junior year, when it came to Mr. Schindel, I got really intimidated, because it went from cover sheets that were this big, cover sheets that were pretty small, and you were given all these questions that you were just generally allowed to follow, so it didn't feel that much pressure, to suddenly cover sheets that were this packed. And so it felt like a lot of reflecting you had to do in one page. This actually ended up being one of my favorite cover sheets that I wrote, because I really got to express how I felt about this assignment and recognize how much I did actually gain from this, something that I didn't really kind of realize that when I had been doing the assignment in the first place. But so this experience was very stressful at first, because I was very intimidated by Mr. Schindel, the whole process of you have one mistake, automatically you get 2 points off, so you go from an A to a B. And there was all these really intense guidelines that you had to follow that really stressed me out. But I really, I kind of gained the confidence from writing these and literally just thinking, what is it that I want to convey, and how do I answer, what information do I want to convey, and therefore what questions do I need to ask myself to get those answers onto the page. And so that was a very big part of it for me, at least, was just learning to ask myself the right questions, which really helped me to reflect. Because before that, I'd been very confused about what analysis meant and what depth meant when it came to reflecting on one's own projects and assignments in the past. And I kind of resisted it because I didn't understand it. And through doing these cover sheets, I really got to learn what reflection was, and I got to kind of change something that before had been kind of intimidating and frustrating for me into something that I actually really enjoyed to gain from. And so that was a very big part of my junior year experience. And so then, for insight into an academic area of interest, I want to talk about my time assistant directing the school musical, Les Mis, last spring. So that was a really great experience. Being an assistant director meant that I had to kind of manage everyone there. I had to check everyone in, call if they weren't there, assign them for different scenes, then go off. When Miss O'Connor, the director, was off doing certain scenes, I'd go and direct other scenes. I was in charge of finding costumes, organizing everything, basically. Props. I was kind of the midway person where if people needed to talk to Miss O'Connor, I would kind of stop them and I'd talk to them first, and then I'd talk to Miss O'Connor about these issues. So there was a lot of pressure and a lot of things on my shoulders, but I really loved this, this challenge. It was another thing where I kind of just had to learn on my feet. I had a co-assistant director, but a lot of the time she wasn't there, and a lot of the time it was just my own, and I had never really done it before, and she had. So I felt very nervous that I wasn't going to be able to keep up with everything and understand all the questions people had for me. And so, Miss O'Connor would come to me and she'd say, I need the petticoat from the makeup room. And I'd go to the makeup room and there'd be thousands of petticoats, and I had to just make a judgment call on my own and trust my own judgment, and just hope that it was right. And if it wasn't, then I had to go with it and just make another call. And it was a really big growth experience for me to learn to trust my own judgment and to feel confident in my own answers rather than needing to ask a lot of people, because I couldn't. My job there was to simplify her life. I couldn't keep asking her questions like, well, which one do you want? Do you want this one or that one? Or how big, how small, what color, shape, all that. I just had to say, okay, and then go with it. And sometimes I did make mistakes, but I recognized that it was okay, and that was just a part of life. And that it didn't mean that I was doing a bad job just because I made a couple mistakes. And I really learned so much during this experience about theater, especially musical theater, because I've been acting since I was like 5. I've been acting for over a decade now. But up until then, I hadn't really been behind the scenes so much. I directed little kids a little bit, but I hadn't really seen the whole picture when it came to theater, like working with props and costumes and the actors and all of that, and bringing it together. And so this was a really great opportunity for me to understand how much work a director has to do and see how a whole production comes together, especially a musical one, because I don't really know much about musical theater, or at least I didn't up until then. So this was just a really great growth experience for me. And this is a photo of me and the cast warming up before a performance. My hands are dirty because before the shows I had to dirty all the peasants for the show. And this is backstage, helping do makeup. That was our Enjolras / Valjean. This is Miss O'Connor doing notes. During rehearsals, especially towards the end, I would have to sit with her in the audience, and she would just voice her notes to me, and I'd write like 20 pages of notes in this notebook, then I'd have to go home and type it up. And so it was a lot of work on my own, a lot of independent work where I had to be very organized, very proficient, and I had to kind of just prioritize with all the different work I had to do. But I think that was really healthy for me because it was a lot of work, and I kept myself motivated, and I didn't give up or anything. And I pushed through, and I really loved every moment of it, even though it was very stressful at some points, and it was a lot of work at some. And this is just me doing makeup backstage. And so, finally, for meaningful contributions to a complex society, I'm going to talk about my service trip to Thailand. This summer it was for a month, and it was called the Come With Nothing trip. Come With Nothing, Go Home Rich, where we came with just one change of clothes in a backpack just to carry on, only the toiletries that they would let you carry on a plane, and basically the essentials. And then when we got there, we purchased the other things we needed in Thailand. And so it was very immersive into the villages in which we went. We went to 3 different villages and worked on a single project in each one. where we'd ask the villagers, we'd get there and we'd say, what do you need help with? What do you need us to work on? And then we'd work on that for 4 days, and we'd travel to the next village. And it was a really great opportunity for me to kind of widen my horizons. And I really learned about my own capabilities there, because before that I was very unsure that I would be able to keep up with other students. And I was afraid maybe like physically or mentally or whatever I might come up short. And so right away in the first village, we worked on building a community area by cementing it over. And it was a lot of physical work, like shoveling, picking rocks from a river, and then also making cement. And so I was kind of nervous about all of this. But when it came down to it, I actually was very proficient at cement making. And I really enjoyed it. And it was a great time to interact with the villagers and really learn about that culture in a much more immersive way. It wasn't a teach me some Thai words. It was like, could you like pass me the bucket? I had to just kind of communicate with them as best I could and try and learn as much as I could just by enjoying the moment, rather than stopping asking a lot of questions and stopping questioning everything around me. So it was a really, it was a different way to learn, which I loved. And I definitely feel that I've changed because of it, especially learning about Thai culture, Buddhist culture, which is such a big part of it. But it was really, really great. And I remember a special learning moment that I had in the first village. We were passing the buckets of dirt and rocks and then also cement to mix to make the concrete. And I wanted to learn Thai numbers. So we'd been passing and saying it aloud in English, but some of the villagers had come back from working in the rice fields to help us. And so I asked them, I asked my guide if he could help me, and then the entire village started shouting the numbers with me. So, I'd say like, Nung, which is 1, and they'd be like, yeah, and they'd like be really encouraging. And then if I couldn't quite figure out the next number, they'd all like go, oh, you can do it, and, well, not you can do it, but they'd all make these kind of encouraging noises, and they really got into it, and they really appreciated my enthusiasm to learn from them. And it was really great. It was a really friendly environment, and they really appreciated my enthusiasm for cement making. And it was so much fun. It was really great. And I actually do know the Thai number system now. I can count up to 100, which was awesome to learn. So this is my group. This is in the second village, which was terribly muddy, so much so that by the end of the week we were entirely coated with mud. But it was a really great challenge, and I really loved it. This is in the third village, where we painted murals on some of the school buildings. And so I outlined a shark and a turtle, and then I'd have the students come in and help color it in. And they really enjoyed getting to paint, which I don't know that they did very often otherwise. And so that was really fun, a fun way to interact with the kids. This is in the first village on a day when it rained really, really hard, and we were already in a river picking rocks out of it. So we were wet from our bottom and from the sky, and so we were completely soaked by the end of the day, but we just kept working through, and it was just really great. It was the first couple days there, but it was really encouraging, seeing everyone's enthusiasm for the work. This is again Second Village at the bottom of the very, very muddy hill. And this is in the rice fields when we got to work there. We actually planted this field. It was not necessarily as good as the villagers, because they just went really fast. They were really impressive at it, but it was really fun, and it was a great experience. And so finally, having gained all these different things from CAP and through my experiences that I've had because of CAP, I've learned a lot, and I think that I'm definitely in a much better place than I was 4 years ago. But I definitely plan on asking more questions. I'm not done with my journey. I don't think that I know exactly which questions to ask perfectly. And I do plan on asking more questions, and probably more questions than most people ask. But I've definitely gained a lot, and I've learned a lot about myself through CAP and about what's important to ask in life, and I've gained a lot of I've gained a lot of important judgment skills through CAP, and on top of all my other learning. And so, yeah, I will ask more questions, but this is me. So, any questions?